The limits of my language are the limits of my knowledge. This famous quote is by a philosopher and mathematician who goes by a name Ludwig Wittgenstein. Now, what Wittgenstein was actually alluding to was a sense that we have a finite set of words in our language dictionary. If we want to convey all the thoughts that come into our mind to the rest of the world, the communication is limited by that limited set of words. So, as human civilization has progressed, and as we have learned about new qualities of the world around us, and as we invent new things, there is an indispensable requirement to add new words or new set of words to our already existing language dictionary and to improve upon that previous model so that we have a better description and a more precise description of the reality. Just to give you a couple of quick examples about the words that have been recently added to the English language dictionary, one such word can be cryptocurrency, and the other such word can be artificial intelligence, or something for which we have a fancy acronym called AI. In order to talk about artificial intelligence, let us first try to understand about intelligence. What simply is intelligence? Now, for a second, it seems quite naive to ask about what is intelligence, because it seems like a very trivial word, something for which we have a very clear understanding of. But the more precisely and the more deeply we ask about the question of intelligence, the more interesting and more confusing it becomes. Because intelligence is not just our ability to solve problems, but also has to do with what is called as consciousness. We use the word consciousness to express the state of mind in which the mind is aware about the surroundings and gives us a subjective sense of now, which means as you are listening to this video, you are watching me, you are hearing me, you are also thinking in the background of your mind about certain ideas about the background noise, or maybe what is the stuff that you have planned to do after having finished watching this video. So that sense of now is called as consciousness. You must have heard that we have got 6 senses. For example, we can talk about the sense of vision, that we see colors. For example, we have red color. But all we know about red color is that we see objects which are red because there is a certain wavelength of electromagnetic spectrum which falls in the range which is about 680 or 700 nanometer, which appears red to our eyes. But as a matter of fact, the red color does not is not an imprint within that photon, because the photon of light just has an oscillation having a wavelength of, let's say, 680 to 700 nanometer. But how does our brain interpret it and assumes it and gives us a sense of red color is what we call as hard problem of consciousness. Same can be applied to taste. Like, for example, sugar tastes sweet. But what do we actually mean by sweet? It is very difficult to define what the sense of sweetness is. And I'm saying this with great responsibility, that the hard problem of consciousness is really an unsolved problem of neurosciences. And that's because we don't really have a concrete understanding of how our brain actually works. So human intelligence is different because our intelligence is based upon the senses, which have strong foundations within the idea of consciousness. Unless we understand consciousness, we don't understand our senses, and therefore we cannot implicitly define what we actually mean by human intelligence. So as you can see, when we describe human intelligence, the discussion tends to be very soon philosophical and outside the reach of our current understanding. Therefore, what we can do for the sake of the video is we can use the word intelligence to just simply refer to our abilities to solve the problems. And when we apply that definition to computers' ability to solve the problems, we start to achieve the meaning of the word artificial intelligence. But computers have had this ability to solve problems for a really long time. I mean, those of you who are familiar with computer science and programming languages, you have this idea that computer can solve a wide variety of problems, like problems for finding a particular set of numbers, a problem for creating a particular pattern of numbers. So computers always had this ability to solve problems. But when did the computer actually become intelligent? So we start imposing the word artificially intelligent. In order to appreciate the development of this word artificial intelligence, we first have to understand another word, which is algorithm. In computer science, algorithm basically refers to the method which is applied to solve a problem. Now, for a really long time, the conventional and modern computers were designed to solve problems based upon a fixed and a rigid algorithm, which means if you input the data, the algorithm will remain constant, and after processing, you can get a deterministic result, which means if you input a set of data into a conventional computing algorithm, you will get a predefined value as an output. But what the technology of artificial intelligence has done is to create computer softwares and to create such algorithms which have a property to self evolve, which means the algorithm itself can now change and evolve in a sense, just like we evolve from learning. For example, if you learned about calculus in your high school or college, you have no understanding of calculus before that, and you acquired that knowledge, and now you have the skill to solve problems related to calculus. You must have heard of something which is called as generative AI or generative artificial intelligence. Now, there are examples of text-based generative AI, like for example, ChatGPT, in which you can type a question and you can ask it to generate a set of words and it can generate it effectively. And then there are also image-based or sometimes video-based generative artificial intelligence. You can ask a generative AI, which is an image-based AI, to generate an image of a cat with a brown fur. Now, how does the computer software has the ability to generate images of cat with brown fur is by scrolling through all the images which are available online. Let's call it database. And through that database of information, the computer can see which ones have caption or which ones have description as a cat. So the computer network can learn about what is a cat, what color is brown, and what color and what is the fur in a cat, so that it can generate images of a cat with a brown fur. Now, previously, this kind of generation was not possible in computation, which was done based upon conventional software, because the computers cannot learn what is a cat and what is a brown color and what is fur. But in this case, as AI has the ability to evolve, so the highlights of the mechanism by which an generative AI is generating an image and how humans think about things in nature and in their imagination are actually analogous but not same. Interestingly, you can think about an elephant, which is pink colored elephant, and AI can also generate images of a pink elephant, but there are differences. Our idea of the color pink is based upon the evolutionary gift that we have received in the form of consciousness. So our idea of the color, especially let's say about the color pink, is based upon consciousness. And the computer's idea about the color pink is based upon an electronic signal which is provided to the display of that computer, and that display translates that signal into the color pink. So what that basically means is that the computer's concept of color pink is relative to human intelligence and human consciousness. And our understanding of the word pink is absolute because it is the quality of our consciousness that we have acquired through millions and millions of years of evolution. So I think that the idea that artificial intelligence is some form of superhuman intelligence is actually a premature idea, because we have to define boundaries of what current AI models can do versus what they cannot do. Let's talk about how a human brain learns and evolves. We can take example that there is a quality of neurons which is called as neuroplasticity, which means the dendritic processes which arise from the neuron can actually form connections, and those connections between the neurons can change. Okay, so since there are billions of neurons in our brain, the order of complexity of connections within these neurons is enormous. And that basically means there is a lot of tendency for brain to restructure, and that ability of restructure of the connection is called as neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity actually makes up for the physical basis of memory, experience, thought, and altogether consciousness. That basically means that consciousness is an emergent property, which also means that a single neuron is not conscious, but a collection of neurons in a structure called brain is very much conscious. What we are trying to do is we are trying to replicate this idea of neuroplasticity, that is basis of intelligence and consciousness, into computers. So in computers, we design a special class of computers which have a hardware that's called as neural networkings or neuronets. Now, neuronets are basically analogous to neuroplasticity of the human brain, in which these neural networks can evolve but through learning. This process of learning through evolution of neural nets is also called as machine learning. And there are also additional sets of words in the computer science literature like deep learning, like neural networking, which basically means some mechanism which allows the computer to learn through experiences. Now, while humans learn through experiences and that manifest in the form of restructuring of connections between the neurons, how a computer device actually learns is by feeding inputs through database of information. Now, human experience is generally very much limited, and also our ability to process information is also very much limited. But that's not true for computer, because computer has access to enormous information in the form of online databases that computers can browse through so many images, so many text, and also computer has a more processing power than human brain, which allows it to learn enormous amount of information and process it. And that is the reason why ChatGPT feels so smart, and also why generative artificial intelligence software are able to generate realistic images of people and the world. I think I was quite successful in establishing that human intelligence is slightly different from artificial intelligence. While human intelligence is absolute, based upon foundations of consciousness, the artificial analog of human intelligence is very parasitic upon our own understanding of consciousness, which remains incomplete. It seems that unless we have a complete understanding of our own intelligence, we cannot extrapolate that idea and build something artificially intelligent and is indistinguishable from the human design. So now let's talk about what the current model of artificial intelligence based upon neural nets can do versus what it cannot do. So the areas of work which require faster and efficient and better processivity, and the work which requires analyzing enormous amount of data sets, that work can be tremendously transformed by the inclusion of artificial intelligence. That includes works in the field of generative artificial intelligence as well as language models. It can also has specific benefits in industries like engineering, where AI models can help to create better structure and better simulations. And it can also help in medicine, for example, in diagnosis of diseases through radiodiagnostic image analyzing. Now, there are qualities of human intelligence which the AI analog cannot do so well. For example, morality, originality, or creativity, and also in some sense, reductionism. Let's take one example of, for say, creativity. You can think about your favorite song and your favorite singer, for favorite composer of music, and you can appreciate that tune which the person has composed. And you can think and ask yourself a question: why don't we have artificially intelligent song composers? Why we don't have AI models which create some original song of their own? As a matter of fact, the creativity aspect of AI is not original, because the only song that AI model can create will be based upon taking inputs from the database of songs it has access to, database of music it has access to, and then abstract and combine all those songs without making any contribution from its own, rather than abstracting and combining and then refining and giving you productions of several songs at a moment with a very high processivity but no essence of originality. What actually that will result into is so many unpleasant songs, and some of those songs can be good to the ear. Another quality of human intelligence that the AI model struggles with is what we call as reductionism. Now, humans have this inbuilt ability of reductionism because of absolute intelligence we have. Reductionism basically means our ability to resolve complex issues and convert them into simpler concepts. That simply basically means idea of reductionism. For example, a human biologist can think of a human body as a structure made up of human cells. Those cells in turn are made up of organelles. You must have heard of mitochondria and nucleus. Those stuff are called organelles. And then if you refine it further, organelles are made up of biomolecules like proteins, lipids, and other stuff, among other stuff, which are in turn made up of atoms and then elementary particles. So we have reduced from a complex structure called human body to a relatively simple structure of electron, protons, and neutrons. That is what we call as reductionist. Reductionism gives us scientists, which means if you think about theory of gravitation, there was a previous theory of gravitation which was prevalent in the medieval science, that things fall towards Earth because they like to fall. And then these theories were refined by physicists. You can take one example of Isaac Newton, who refined the theory of gravitation as an action at a distance force, that two massive bodies attract each other because of the intrinsic nature to attract each other. And that theory was further refined by Albert Einstein in his general theory of relativity, that gravity is nothing but a curvature of space-time. So that basically gives us a model that human beings can actually create theories of the world which go from complex theories and then simplify it to more accurate picture and description of reality. That is the product of reductionism which the artificial intelligence lacks. And as a consequence of that, there are no AIs which are scientists, which means you cannot create an AI which is Einstein. At least the current AI models, which are based on neural nets, will never be able to replicate the work of scientists and composers and those works which have originality, creativity, spirituality. And in essence, these qualities of human intelligence are little understood, therefore, they are not well structured in the AI model. You must have heard theories like AI is dangerous and AI is the beginning of the end of the world, while artificial intelligence model should be seen as just a tool which help us assist in creating better softwares which fulfill more important and responsible purposes, which means AI will not destroy the world if artificial intelligence is used as a tool in a correct way. It's just like something which can use to create weapon or something which you can use to cure diseases. The choice is still in your hand. Let's see, we have an AI model which can communicate in a very realistic manner. Still, the AI model learns through experiences or through databases which have an inbuilt bias in it, which means it can be sometimes morally right, sometimes morally wrong, but not always morally right or always morally wrong. Let's assume that we make such an AI model a candidate in the United States presidential election, and it happens to win that election. In that case, the AI model will have the power to change the world depending upon its decisions. But remember, its decisions are based upon the databases which it had access to, and that has no grounds of morality, spirituality, and even originality, which means it can be destructive for the world only if you allow it to be. In a sense, AI is just a tool. It's not something which is conscious and human like. What makes us humans really unique and really profound is our ability of having absolute consciousness and absolute intelligence. Which means, although AI is serving the purpose of acting as an assistant or a tool to serve our purposes, but AI is not truly a replacement of human intelligence, let alone about superhuman intelligence. Now, let me be very clear that I am not an expert on artificial intelligence. But what I'm doing is sincere and factual reporting about the stuff which I really know through learning from experts and telling you to a specific group of audience, let's say students and college grads. And I'm doing this because I have seen so many people who are concerned about the fact that AI will take all the jobs and AI is the doom of human civilization and artificial intelligence is something to be very scared of. And to the matter of fact, AI is nothing but a tool, and it truly depends upon ourselves whether we give it access to destroy human civilization or to make benefits. It truly depends upon us how we use AI because it's just a tool. Now, don't get me wrong, there are certain jobs which will be lost courtesy of the AI. And that's because there are jobs which require analyzing information and making predictions based upon those analyzations with better processing power. Those jobs are obviously at risk. Now, in science, more often than not, the progress is made through reductionism because we want to find simpler explanations of complicated problems. For example, if you talk about a disease, let's say diabetes, it can manifest a variety of symptoms and a variety of complications, as we call it. But if you see the end convergence of symptoms of diabetes are basically either insulin deficiency or insulin insensitivity. So that basically means that we have a simpler explanation for a presentation of wide array of problems. That also applies to problems in physics. So basically, what we do as scientists and how progress is made in science is through the art of reductionism, and that model is better fulfilled by the human intelligence when you compare it with the artificial analog. So you should ask yourself a question. Is your job or is your future career going to be oriented to a platform where you are going to analyze information and process that information? Sure, will have hard time because the alternatives are present in the artificial intelligence scheme. But if you talk about having a career which is original, having a career which requires you to use qualities of human intelligence like reductionism, which cannot be replicated in the artificial analog or the AI model, then your career is better supplemented and your career is better, there will be boom in your career rather than, having negative effects of the AI introduction. So my message to you is that the introduction of artificial intelligence in academia is rather comforting, and it's not something very retrogressive or something which will have negative repercussions. So I would like to end this short video with one of my favorite quotes by an American businessman, Gary Vaynerchuk, which goes on to say that skills are cheap and passion is priceless. So if your career journey is taking you towards something which is limited by the idea of acquiring skills and lacking originality, then your career is obviously going to have stiff competition with coming generations of AI. Whereas if your career is more focused upon originality of work, as well as innovation, as well as introduction of reductionism in what you are doing, and that basically means that your career is going to be likely supplemented or fostered by artificial intelligence. And this idea is an incontrovertible evidence that at some point of time we have made a transition from innovation being a good thing to have to innovation and originality now being a necessity in our daily lives. Thank you for watching.